OK, GB News can reveal almost 500 migrants have crossed the Channel to reach the UK on small boats, with hundreds more expected, potentially anyway, before the end of the day. The poor weather has taken some of the pressure off Rishi Sunak's government after the Prime Minister promised to get tough on those abusing the UK's immigration system. I'm going to get stuck straight in and go live now to Dover with GB News' Home and Security Editor Mark White. He has a bit of intel that came through which suggested that today was potentially going to be a record day. Last time I spoke to you, Mark, we understood there was another boat on its way in the Channel being escorted over by the French. Any update?
Yeah, the latest on that is that boat load appeared to have been picked up by the French and is now returning back to France. Having said that, though, another small boat has appeared in the waters, in French waters at the moment, trying to make it to that sort of demarcation line to UK waters. It seems that as many boats that have crossed today, just as many haven't actually made it. Now, that's not unusual. It's tough going for these flimsy little inflatables with very small in power outboard motors attached to them to try to get across with quite strong tides that are going through the Channel. It's flat calm out there today, but it's still, as I say, tough going, and it's not unusual to see a significant percentage of the boats that leave the French beach trying to get to the UK, eventually having to turn round because they just can't make it any further. They run out of fuel or whatever the problem is, and then they return to France. But having said that, 9 boats have made it across so far today, with more than 450 migrants on board, taken to that processing centre at Dover Harbour, initially just for those initial checks before then going on to the main processing base down the road at Manston in Kent, where they'll be held for 2 or 3 days before then, of course, being shipped out, usually to hotel accommodation as they await more semi or permanent accommodation as they wait what will be undoubtedly a long process of trying to determine whether their asylum claims are legitimate or not.
Indeed, Mark, you've been there all day and the weather appears to have broken somewhat. Of course, now it's getting darker and presumably a bit colder as well. But, yes, the fact is that they're showing no sign of abating, is it? Despite the fact that it's a new year and Rishi Sunak, pledging to get tough, this is still happening.
Yeah, well, we've heard it from the Prime Minister. This is a top priority. He wants to get to grips with the small boat crisis. But today has shown absolutely that any time there's a break in the weather, you'll get a surge in small boats coming. They've not been able to do it really for many days over the past couple of months because unlike last year, November actually was the busiest month of the year last year. This November and December were very bad in the Channel. That's continued into January. So since January the 1st, it's only been a few days that there has been weather that's just about passable for these boats to come. Today, much better. That's why we're getting high numbers again today. Now, the last boat to come in to Dover was about an hour and a half ago, and that Border Force vessel was carrying the occupants of 2 small boats, about 100 people that were plucked from the middle of the English Channel and taken here to Dover Harbour. And as I say, it just goes to show that, whatever Rishi Sunak might say about the government's determination, actually whatever they implement will not be quick and it will not be simple because they can be more effective in terms of the operations in the Channel. In other words, identifying the boats as they come across and picking up those on board the boats, but actually trying to tackle the people smuggling gangs on the other side of the Channel is much more difficult. The National Crime Agency is working ever more closely with their French colleagues, but it's a lucrative business. The criminal gangs are highly organised now. They have a ready supply of boats coming from China that go to Turkey and then are shipped to Germany for onward transferal to France, where they're assembled and sent across. There's no shortage of supplies. There's no shortage of criminals willing to take up an enterprise that on a good week can net them many millions of pounds.
Yeah, exactly, Mark. And as you were talking there, we were playing some footage that came to us about an hour ago anyway, of those very boats that you were talking about, of those very people you were being talking about. And in light of the story that I'm going to cover next, which is about this asylum seeker who was convicted of a double murder in a different country, drug dealing, etc., came over here, pretended to be a child, was in a school with British kids, did go on to murder an aspiring Royal Marine as well. Mark, the public, I think increasingly now more than ever, have a right to be concerned about public safety given what's going on in the Channel, don't they?
Well, one of the biggest issues, I think, as far as the authorities are concerned, is they just don't have a handle on who is coming across, because the way in which the people smuggling operation works is that the people smuggling gangs, the criminal gangs, tell those coming across that the best way to ensure the most favourable outcome in your asylum process is clearly to have a good and a strong backstory, and that will often require them, as far as the people smugglers are concerned, throwing away passports, other documentation, mobile phones. We captured images of them doing just that late last year, tossing their mobile phones into the Channel. Now doing that endeavour makes it so much more difficult for authorities here to try to bottom out who these people are, if they are coming from the country they say they're coming from, if they are the age they say they are, what their backstory is. And when you're facing that kind of difficulty in trying to get that background information on individuals, then it is very difficult at the end of the day to determine whether someone has a legitimate claim to asylum. And often what the authorities here will do is to err on the side of the asylum seeker if there is no evidence to the contrary. But regardless of what they do, there's a huge logjam because of the volume of people who've been coming across. 46,000 last year, and the authorities expecting the potential for another significant surge in small boat arrivals this year, depending, of course, on the weather. That's the one saving grace for this government, really, is the weather over the last few months, or there would have been much more pressure on Rishi Sunak and his government.
Well, exactly. Look, Mark, thank you very much. Done a marathon stint for us there in Dover today. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's been there bringing you live exclusive reporting from the numbers of people who've been making their way across the Channel today, at least 9 small boats, potentially another one on the way as well.